and it just worked. It was really neat to do that, and so I started adding those, and it really made things pop. It really started to add that depth and stuff. And then later on, when I moved to my prior house, I was looking at it and I was saying, what if I started like stacking the modulars, so doing
Hmm.
rows of just not having them just in a single row, but doing a row and then a higher row and then another. And so then I really started to play with the elevation and stuff. And I really, really liked the result of that. It was fantastic because you'd have, yeah, these everywhere you'd look and you would just draw your eye in as you stood in the doorway, you were just completely drawn into this world, which was like that. And that's exactly what I was going for with that. It was really, really fun.
Hello, bricks, chicks, and minifigures. You are listening to AFOLs Welcome, where we talk about all things Lego from the perspective of two adult collectors. We're your co-host. I'm Grinch,
And I'm West.
and today we are headed downtown with Mr. Bookieboo and going into a grand discussion about his epic Lego city. But before we do that, as always, West, I have a very important question for you. What did you build this week? How are you doing, my friend?
Well, good. We're still working on settling in, trying to figure out where to put my large boxes of Lego sets that I'm not opening right now because we're moving so much, and we've decided underneath our bed is the place that we're going to put them. It's the best
Just like
storage
Cash
we have
Money.
at the moment. Yeah, underneath the mattress, right? Yeah, exactly.
There's a storage technique that involves removing the bags from the box,
Oh, I don't.
assembling the sets, and then you take the set and you put it into another box.
I see. I've done that a few times actually with some other ones.
You can actually you don't actually have to put the set right in the storage box too. You could like leave it out on the display or
Okay,
play
yeah,
with
yeah.
it, or like some people make cities out of them. I mean, whatever you want to do. But ultimately,
Um,
just put it back in the box.
but I did mention last week that I had built two F1 cars, and I recently did the Spanish Garden. And then the last set that I've sort of built recently and over the break was the new U-Wing from Andor Season 2, which was very exciting to build. A lot of fun to revisit that ship itself. Smaller than the U-Wing from Rogue One. And there just was some really cool details from that first one that didn't quite carry over to the second one. So I don't know if I would say it's as good, but really, like I said, cool to revisit a really unique ship from the Star Wars universe. But I did want to just plug the Spanish Gardens for a second. And what a really wonderful build once you get to the garden part.
So the
Because,
Spanish part is not good.
well,
Just the garden. Joke. That's a joke. That's a joke.
no, I
Everybody.
need to clarify. Great point, Grinch. It's not so much any sort of issue with what is being built per se. The issue is it's modular, and so you can take it's done. You can kind of turn it from like a landscape to a portrait mode on your little garden itself. So you can take the tiles out and swap them around.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to look at it landscape, you can put kind of like the two wall pieces on the back side of it. And you can also do that kind of in a portrait orientation. And it's really unique because we haven't really seen Lego do that before, especially in sort of this garden botanicals theme that exists. What that ultimately means, though, is you're building in a lot of extra stuff around the set and then underneath the set to support this movement.
Yeah.
And so a good, like almost 40 to a third of the build, 40% to like a third of the build is just building that like infrastructure in place in order to then do that. And that ended up being a lot. But once you got into building like the details, the fountains, the trees, that was just a lot of fun. Cypress trees in it look stunning. Those kind of tall pine trees that they have. The fountain in the center is gorgeous. Wow, what a really like pretty Lego fountain. The ability to capture water like that in Lego these days is just really cool and unique to see. So highly recommend. I think future me will probably try to find a way to incorporate that into a Lego city in some capacity because that would be such a fun thing to do. But yeah.
Well, I've been getting a lot of love on my dioramas, my Lord of the Rings dioramas on
Yeah, they look
Instagram and
great.
Reddit and Rebrickable. The instructions are on Rebrickable. I've got one more that's coming out. In my opinion, it's my favorite. So I just finished building that one, and it's been fun to play around with the lights. I did use Light My Brick, the new system, the 2.0, because I guess the wire is thinner, so you can actually pretty easily stick it under bricks and plates without. It makes it way easier to hide because a lot of the wires are like cylinderish,
Mhm.
like your typical wire. They're wire-ish. The wires are wire-ish. It's like Irish, wire-ish, but it's hard to put plates on them, right? And you have to
Right.
maybe have a piece sticking up, or you have to have specific design, like a Technic pinhole brick, to be able to stick a wire through. These are so flat that you can literally just put bricks on top of it or put plates on top of it, and it just goes flush over it without
Wow.
sacrificing it,
There's
sticking
no
up
like
a
little
little bit.
bump or anything.
There's a microscopic one that's so small that is probably already there because you didn't push the brick down all the way anyway. Like when you're
Mhm.
building and you're like, oh, whoops, I didn't hit that in all the way. You kind of re-click it in or tighten it up. I mean, it's just like that sort of thing. So it's functionally, it does not hinder the build at all. And so
That's cool.
um, I've really been enjoying that, and so I just wanted to say I feel like you really get what you pay for it, because like my brick is a little bit more expensive than the other ones out there. This is not an advertisement; it's just me updating as I've gone through my little personal journey with Lego lighting here. So it does, as long as you use it sparingly and in a way that like I'm using the one power box for all of my mocks to help reduce cost, right? Because that's like
Mhm.
$20 a power box sort of thing. So just having them all stick in, I got 2 packs of lights, and I'm able to do all the lighting I needed to with that. So definitely as an expense, but having that Light My Brick, the 2.0 specifically, has been really nice.
Nice. I need to check
And
that out
then
too.
I think this is a good time to plug. I will be at Brick
Yeah.
Fair, Virginia this week, just like we were at Brick World. So this Friday, or this coming Friday, if you're listening in the future, just skip forward 30 seconds. But this Friday, August 1st, I will be down in Chantilly, Virginia at Brick Fair with some builds on display. So come find the yellow AFOLs t-shirt and say hello. I'll be there Friday through Saturday and hanging out. So I'm doing a couple of parts drafts, as our guest told us about. Philip told us about on Brick World. So for people who don't know, that's where you buy in with either a set or a monetary value. So they're doing the Ministry of Magic set, and
Oh,
then you
okay.
just start picking your pieces that you want from it. It's like $30, and you're gonna end up on it with an average of like 400 plus pieces. So I think that'll be really fun and cool
Yeah.
to parting out a set to the extreme, because you just kind of get what you want from the set then.
That's kind of interesting. Um, Unfortunately, I will not be joining Grinch on this adventure. My current employment situation does not give me the flexibility to make a meaningful venture out to Chantilly this weekend. So I am gonna be staying back on this one. But if you're out there and you see Grinch, snap a picture, tag us on it at AFOLs Welcome at Instagram, and yeah, I know we've got some fun stuff in store. Grinch has some really great displays for everyone to see.
Thank you for the plug. And why don't you take us over some exciting Lego news? Exciting Lego news.
All right, well, Grinch, we had some really exciting announcements this week in Lego news. First up, the Lego Game Boy was officially revealed in partnership with Nintendo. That was also sort of associated with our San Diego Comic-Con reveals, including new sets from Wicked and Stranger Things. We got a reveal of the Arkham Asylum set that is to be released this year, or at the end of this year. And lastly, as we discussed last episode, there was a potential that this idea review stage would reach 100 projects as of July 24th, Lego Ideas officially has over 100 sets in its official review stage, and the review period doesn't end until later this summer. So there could be plenty more to go. Grinch, what stands out
If
to you?
this podcast gets 100 likes this next week on YouTube, West and I will go through every project one by one.
Careful
Our
what you
pain
promise.
is your gain.
We'll devote 5 minutes to each one.
No. I just said go through each one. I don't put a time limit on it, sir. That's 500 minutes.
That's a long episode.
We'll actually do 10 minutes. No. For the love of God. Dude, this Game Boy, in all seriousness, is
Pretty great.
epic. I mean, I don't want to say it's the perfect Lego set because I don't have it in my hands. I haven't built it yet. You know, I can't make that claim, but like just by the looks of this thing, it's perfect. But TBD.
It almost tricked me with the images because they just showed them kind of adjusting, and I was like, does that actually work? Because I was like, are we at a point where we could miniaturize a Game Boy down to like what would fit inside the screen there to play like an old 16-bit game or whatever, you know? And I was like, man, that would be like just crazy. But it, to your point, right? It looks so realistic. It allows your mind to go there because you're just like, what am I looking at here? Is this Lego or is this actually just a Game Boy? Fascinating. You know, it'd be really cool is if Nintendo released a Lego version of the Game Boy where it's just the Game Boy, but it has all the lines of the Lego set like etched into it. That would be kind of a neat like crossover.
Capitalism in its finest.
Yep.
Limited edition. I do want to say real quick too. When this was first announced, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. It looks like it's all print, which is really cool because there's a lot of snot build on this. A lot of different using different sides of Lego plates. So that's cool.
It's all built on the side, right?
Yeah,
like the case of the Game Boy is actually just built like it's not built up in like the Z-axis that we typically would think of like building vertically. It's built all horizontally on like the X-axis, and so just a really interesting way to build a set like that.
When we first had this announced, right? Not revealed, but announced, we had said, what games do we think? And I don't know why we both used Game Boy Color games, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, the Game Boy came out like 8 years before the Game Boy Color. So the game selection are Super Mario Land and then Zelda. So I just fitting for the Game Boy specifically.
Absolutely. And even the cartridges look realistic. Like just the way that they've shaped them and everything and the depth. I think there's a print on the cartridge, the Nintendo, or I think that is a sticker. But just the at least from what we got from the images, right, which I know don't always cross over to reality, they looked extremely realistic. So
I wonder if they used, because they're curved. The Nintendo Game Boy part on the top of the cartridge with the little lip on it, that looks like a print because it goes up all the way to the edge of the piece. And I wonder if the print, it does. I agree, it looks like a print on the cartridge itself, but I wonder if they're doing the little like thick stickers like they've done with the other Mario sets. Because they're the stickers, the cut there's a die cut or laser cut on the sticker is curved. The edges are, and they typically don't do that with their regular sticker sheets.
Interesting.
On a square sticker like that.
Yeah.
So I wonder, and then where it's positioned on that big 6x6 tile is very specific too. So I wonder if for that reason they're doing those because the intention is to slide it in and out. And so I would think that you would want to have that thicker sticker material that they use when they had those Mario QR codes on the set. So I wonder if it's that.
Yeah, something to withstand the repeated, pulling those in and out. Yeah. Let's talk Lego ideas real quick. 100 projects. We talked about the rules changing last year a little bit. or the guidelines. Grinch, are we at a point where we could see that 10,000 vote threshold increasing? Because I think we probably are, and I think this is blowing out of the water any of the previous review stages that we've ever had. They've been getting bigger, but this is now like exponentially bigger. It's not been a linear curve here, and again, and this review stage isn't even over. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hit 120 by the end, especially in 1 week, getting 20 projects passed. Either Ideas needs to increase that threshold, or they're going to have to start getting more selective. But Lego's going to ultimately make more work for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, if the amount of sets getting through the review stage prior was not enough to trigger a higher threshold, then if this isn't enough to trigger a higher threshold, then I don't know what is.
Do you think it'll be? I could see something like 12,000. I feel like 15 might be too much, but
I could see them going like in an increment. Yeah, like maybe 12. But again, I mean, some of these things just get viral in the Lego community to the point where, what would that realistic new threshold be, right?
Yeah. And would you ultimately then be sort of only encouraging like the virility of these? You know what I mean? Like,
that's always kind of been an issue with Lego Ideas, though, of like,
yeah,
you kind of have to market it on your own. There's new submissions every day that you don't even see, right? So,
right. Well, Grinch, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the Arkham Asylum, and
no love for Wicked.
I do like that they have minifigures. I'll say that much.
I did ask my wife because she loves Wicked. She's like, "Well, how much is it?" Because it's the like an art style wall art of the Emerald City.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, it's like $160." She goes, $160. So that was that. But I was like, "But it's minifigures," and she didn't want the other Wicked sets because they were mini dolls, and she doesn't like mini dolls. So we'll see. She said if it goes on sale, get it. So,
there you go.
But she approved of it overall. She just said it was too expensive.
Well, this Arkham Asylum set is really cool, and I haven't really engaged in the DC and superhero stuff too much. I did pick up the Daily Bugle. That was kind of the last Marvel modular that I got. But this one, I'm thinking it might need to be on the list because the detail there is just so cool, and the potential to turn it into adjust it and modify it in some really fun ways is definitely there. Or it could totally just be left as the Arkham Asylum. But man, what a really great building. And much like the Ninjago City building that we got this year, it's done on an inverse corner. So it's a corner building, but it goes into the base plate in a really cool way. So Grinch, anything about it stand out to you?
I've said before I'm not like the biggest DC stan, but that's okay. I am. There's been a lack of DC sets for a little bit now, and I'm happy for the DC fans out there. Enjoy
Absolutely.
it. Enjoy it. They've been sitting jealously on the sideline as Marvel's gotten multiple of these modular type sets through the past couple of years now. So enjoy. But I won't get it, but it looks good. It looks good. All right, let's go ahead and get our guest in the show and head over to today's topic. Today's topic. Joining us today is a master planner, builder, and a mayor of his very own Lego City. Whether it's trains running on schedule, modulars lining the streets, or custom builds tucked in every corner of this metropolis, Mr. Bookieboo is the mastermind behind it all. So thank you, Mark, for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be
welcome.
Here. Thank you.
We certainly have seen your Lego City before, and we'd been wanting to do a episode on just talking about Lego cities. So, in our opinion, what a better, I don't think there's any better way to do it than having somebody on here that's known for their Lego City, right?
Lego City.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So before we get into the Lego City, though, just tell us quickly about yourself. How what was your AFOL journey?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So basically, I've been an AFOL for about almost 20 years now. And I started right before my first son was born. So he's 19 now. And so, my wife was pregnant and we were getting excited, starting to plan the kids' room and all that stuff. And I hadn't even looked at a Lego since I was, a kid. And so, so I'm at Target one day and I'm venturing down the aisles and say, oh, I'm gonna go look at the toy section because I'm like, what? Who wouldn't love to do that, right? And so I started going up and down the toy aisles and I came to the Lego aisle and I was like, oh, I remember this stuff when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, this stuff's pretty cool now. This is neat. So I ended up buying a small little fire truck. That was my first set. I don't remember the set number, but it was in the four digits, so it was a long time ago. But I bought a just a little fire engine, brought it home, built it, loved it. Went back the next day, bought another set, built it, loved it. Day after that, and that was it. It was the beginning of the end. That one little fire truck, I still have it. It was the beginning of the end, and from there things just spiraled. I got into all the different themes, but then I ultimately kind of really settled in on city. That was kind of my big like kind of what I just really honed in on because I just really enjoyed the city building so much.
It's amazing what a simple Lego fire truck can do. I think for me it was a random brickheads because I went to go
Yeah.
get West a gift and I was like, well, I've never seen anything like this before, and then just bam, and now you've got a giant city room.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It keeps growing.
Do you
Yeah.
still have that fire truck somewhere in the
I
city? Is it
it's actually not in the city. I actually modified
okay?
it. I have it in a box. Because I just moved about 3 months ago, and so I'm still repopulating things. So I don't really have many vehicles out, but I do have it in a box, and it is gonna go. The modified version is gonna be in the city for sure. Yeah,
Nice.
it's cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So does that mean Lego City is your favorite theme, or do you have the Lego City's the passion, and maybe
That's
there's another theme that you really enjoy?
Yeah, so that's a good one. I kind of like all the themes really. There's really no the theme that I don't like, but I would say the castle and the pirates really sing to me in classic space just from my childhood. So those sets, I'm a sucker for those. Like shortly after I started with that fire truck, it was in the Crown Knight Castle era for Lego. So the
Oh
crownies
yeah.
and the orcs and the dwarves. So I hit that at just the right time and I went nuts buying all of those sets and multiples of those. It was bad. And I started army building. It was really bad. But they were so the knights hold a the knights hold a special place in my heart. And then the pirates, Star Wars, Legos, because I love Star Wars, so Lego Star Wars, but I don't not as much. I kind of pick and choose those sets nowadays because of space. I don't have a whole lot of room for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the city and then city, of course. But city, honestly, though, it was really the modulars that set it apart for me. Because city sets are, yeah, some are good, some are not so good. They're kind of it waxes
Yeah.
and wanes. But the modulars are what really, really set things up for me, and that's kind of where the whole city thing started.
Well, when you have a city like yours that's so detailed and so immersive and so just it's broad, it's larger, and you do have so much detail in like kind of every corner, right? Like the city theme these days is a not only very sort of like itself broad strokes, right? Like here's a basic structure with two walls on either side and a roof, maybe.
Mhm, yeah,
And
maybe.
they're very like playable, not really
Mhm,
meant for detail. And then it's also an amalgamation of like some very classic themes: boats, trains, police and fire, that all used to be their own
mhm.
themes that are now sort of all one city theme. So
Exactly. And that's kind of the beauty of it is because it's so broad, you can incorporate, like I have little castle elements hidden throughout the city. I've tried to I even have Star Wars. I figured out a way to do that. I built a Star Wars modular. So it was like, just because I'm like, this would be kind of a cool idea. And so yeah, you can literally pull from it. And then even the superheroes line has been awesome with like the Daily Bugle and the Avengers Tower. Now we have the Arkham Asylum coming out. Like, that's awesome. That Arkham Asylum went from like, oh, that's cool. I'm probably not interested, to like an auto buy. 'Cause I'm like, oh, it's modular, dude. I have to have it in my city, you know. Lego knows what they're doing.
How much of that stuff do you modify? I mean, I've seen, your videos, but do you, for the listener, do you tend to do a ton of modification, or just kind of, because like West had
Yeah.
modified the Daily Bugle, but he removed the superhero stuff and kind of like completed it as is. Do you go more that route, or do you leave it in all its glory?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a purist with modulars. The one thing I do with them though is I swap the sidewalks. So because the roads, I switched to the new roads, so they're dark bluish gray, and most of the modular sidewalks are dark bluish gray. So to me, it blends too much, and so I do swap out the sidewalk to light bluish gray for the most part, unless there's some tiling or other detailed coloring in there. But otherwise, I try to leave the modulars as they are. I don't really modify them at all. Unless I have, well, unless I'm adding, when I add lights to them, I modify them a little bit, I guess. So technically I modify them a little, but otherwise they're true to like how they're built. But then what I do is I'll add my own modulars into the mix, and I'll add lots of my own individual things. Like I've done my tuning garage, my Star Wars, modular. There's a few others sprinkled here and there in the, throughout the city. Yeah.
Music to my ears. I hate modifying sets.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, and actually, so like standard city sets are prime for that. Like for example, that tuning garage was like I looked at that set and it was very simple. It's like it was designed for kids, right? It was like a kid's set, and it was very simple, it was very affordable. And I looked at it and I was like, that needs to be like a modular, that needs to be built out, and that would look really cool in the city. And so that's what I did. I just took that idea, and I love doing that. I love taking official sets and
Sure.
making them my own. That's
Right.
that's I mean that's the beauty of Lego. It's the whole point, is to create and use your mind and be inspired and do things with it, instead of it's nice to just build. Sometimes they follow instructions. That can be very therapeutic, and it's good. But it's also, to me, the whole foundation of Lego is just, use your imagination and build whatever you want. So it serves both purposes.
So, favorite set? Sometimes that's an easier question to answer than the theme.
Yeah, so I would have to say, well, my favorite set is probably the UCS Falcon from Star Wars. And there's a story behind that, because I missed the original one that came out. They came out with the original UCS one. I just at the time I was like, this is too big. What am I gonna do with it? Well, and so I missed that one. So I was like, whatever. I'm like, they're never gonna do it again. It's fine, And then they came out with a new one. I'm like, oh. And I was hemming and hawing about it. I was like, oh, I really want this, but where am I going to put it? Because it's ginormous. The thing is, it's like 2 feet, probably more than that. It's like 2.5 feet across. I mean, it's huge. And I'm like, I have no place to put it. But anyway, so I was at my local Lego store, and I had gotten there early because I'm early to everything pretty much in my life. So I'd gotten there before they opened, and there was like two guys in line. And I'm like, it's not a release day. I'm like, what are you guys waiting for? I'm like, hey. So I'm like, hey, what are you guys waiting for? And they're like, oh, dude, they have Falcons here. Because it was when it was like just came out, and they were like sold out everywhere, right? It was nuts. And it was like the black card. Remember the whole VIP thing and all that? Yeah. So yeah, so these guys are like, yeah, they go, dude, they have Falcons here. I'm like, what? And I'm like, how many do they have? And it's like, they have like 6. And there was like 2 guys, and I'm like, oh man, this is like a sign, if it ever was. And so I quit. I'm like, oh, so I get in line with them, because I'm like, okay, well, gee. And then I call my wife real quick, and I'm like, hey, by the way, they have the UCS Falcon that I've been talking about here. And she's just like, oh, if you want to get it, whatever, And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm getting a Falcon today. And so just getting, because I never thought I would get it, and just the experience of that set was just building it that was probably one of my favorite builds, to be honest with you. Just probably because it was a Star Wars nostalgia, but also just building it was really well thought out, the design of it. And just to see this blob of, like Technic, and you're like, what? Like, how is this going to all come together? And then the finished process of it was pretty amazing to see. So that's my favorite set. But I mean, there's others, of course, but that's probably like all time. That would probably be number one.
It's a good pick.
Yeah.
It is a real interesting experience too, because you do really build like the internal skeleton of it, right? And then you're kind of like, this is, what? How is this
like,
going to go to that?
How is this going to go? Right. And how are these plates going to sit? Because they even have the plates at angles, which is amazing, because, usually Lego is very like 90-degree kind of orientation for stuff. And so the way that the plates, the shell sits on the frame, and it's fairly, I mean, I've moved it 3 times now, and it hasn't really fallen apart. So it's
Right.
it's remarkably sturdy. Yeah. But it's just such a fun build.
That's awesome. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's good
Yeah.
reason too. So the old I was at the Lego store and they had the Falcon, so I
Yeah.
bought
So it's like, I got to do it, right? What am I going to do?
So today we're going to talk a lot about your Lego City because it's just the
Mhm.
thing that you like to focus on. It's a
Sure.
clear passion. And before we get into that, though, if people want to go check out your Lego City, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me. You can search for Mr. Bookieboo. That's my handle. And you can find me on Instagram, YouTube. I have a Facebook page, mostly Instagram and YouTube. TikTok a little bit too. I'm trying to get into that a little bit more. But yeah, and you can find city videos. I try to do weekly updates on the city. I try to put a lot of tutorials into that as well, how-tos, things like that, or just talking about the design and the theory behind what I'm doing. And then Instagram, I'm pretty regular on there too. So you can find me on all those places. And yeah, I appreciate it if you want to follow.
I just watched your video on the Ninjago Peninsula. So
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun having
drop a
all these
like,
different
everybody.
things.
Drop a
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All those things,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you kind of set up my question perfectly here because we talked about the fire truck, but what inspired I mean, is it just the fire truck? Was there any more to the inspiration for the Lego City or?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I mentioned earlier, it was the modulars is what
Oh,
really got me
right. Yep.
going. Yeah, the fire truck like started the whole Lego thing. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And then I thought, like, boy, they got to have like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to it than just building a set and putting it on the shelf, and like, oh, that's kind of neat. So I started thinking. And then I saw the modulars now, and it's actually funny. So I missed out on it's actually another funny story. So I started at the beginning, okay, but my very first modular was Green Grocer, okay.
Mhm.
I actually had Cafe Corner in my hands at Walmart on clearance at the time, and I was like, this is really neat. And then I'm like, this is too big. What am I gonna do with it? Whatever. And I put it back. Biggest regret of my life. I was like, oh my gosh. Biggest Lego regret of my life. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like that's bad. Anyway, and I recently actually just acquired that set. So that was my white whale. But so it's kind of cool. I just acquired it just before my birthday's coming up. It was like perfect. So but anyway, so I had that Green Grocer, and then the next one was was it the what was after Green Grocer? Was it the
Market Street.
Market Street? I missed that Market Street. And then what was after Market Street? Was it the Pet Shop or the Fire Brigade? I don't
Fire
remember.
Brigade.
Fire Brigade. And then it was like the Pet Shop. So I started
Town Hall, yep.
accumulating. Yeah. So I slowly started accumulating these things because I was like, these are so neat. They're so much fun to build. And I did like pretty much everyone else that doesn't have a city. I put them on a shelf, right? I had them on a shelf in my son's room because he had a big bed with a big like credenza thing over it, and it had this perfect like length for modulars. I'm like, oh, I'll never outgrow that. So I just would put them up there. And it's like, yeah, famous last
Little
words,
did you
right?
know.
Yeah. And so I started doing that, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I go in his room and I play with him and I'd look and oh, these are so nice. That's cool, right? And then I'm like, wait a minute, there's got to be more to this though. There's got to be. And I thought back to my childhood. I had a full Lego city when I was a child. And of course, mine was, 3 bricks tall with no roofs, as you said, Wes. It was like very basic and simple. But man, I love that. I had the road plates and I'd play with that for hours and hours every day. I had this, it was my little city and it was awesome. And so I started thinking like, man, these modulars will look great in a city, right? With more to it, just and just having it on a shelf. And so I acquired some space from my kids' toy room. And I went to IKEA and I bought just like 2 tabletops, simple little tables. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm just going to have 2 little tables. I'm going to have my little row of modulars, a road in front of it, and a couple cars, and maybe some trees. No problem. This is gonna be awesome. And so that's what I did. That's how I started. And that's it started with that. And then a month later, I went back to IKEA and bought another table. and then it kind of grew and grew. And then within the year, the kids kind of lost their toy room. I was like, yeah, you guys never play any with toys. You guys are getting too old for that. And so I kind of, and then it just kind of slowly grew from there. And it just was this evolution, and it was this constant. building and rebuilding and moving things around and trying out different layouts and things and trying to optimize the space, which was huge because I know that's a huge thing for most AFOLs don't have enough space. Pretty much
Mhm.
all of us, I think, honestly can say we don't have enough space. We need more space. And so I've worked, that's one thing I've worked really hard with my city is optimizing the space and trying to get everything to fit.
It's so funny how when you're building a Lego city or planning the Lego city, how you almost become like a miniature city planner yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it
And
is. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not the same thing, right? But
Yeah.
we're effectively talking about urban density and land scarcity, which is the same issue facing modern cities all the time. And we're
Right.
just thinking about it from like my table space is starting
Yeah,
to get
it's valuable. Yeah, the real
yeah.
estate is incredibly valuable out there. Yeah. And it's limited. You have a very limited, amount of space to work with. Yeah.
So you're like, at some point that 4-lane highway that I put in, I think I might need to make it into a 2-lane road so I can throw another.
So early on, when I had my layout was kind of in my old house, it was kind of set. And I said, "Oh, I want an airport. I want a Lego airport." Because I remembered back to like the Lego ideas. There was a Lego ideas book when I was a kid, and I loved it. It was the one with Bill and Mary in it. And it was this, and I would look at that book for like day. It was my
Mhm.
favorite book. I would look at it because it has so much ideas that I'm like, oh, to have all those bricks and to do all this cool stuff. And they had an airport. So I'm like, I want an airport. And so I started laying out an airport with all I had old classic space road plates. Like I had the whole thing. It was
Mhm.
awesome. And I was like, this is going to be so epic. And then I realized, it's like 42 base plates of just runway and like taxiways. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. It's just too much room. I have no space
Yeah.
for it. And
Maybe
otherwise
a
I could be using
heliport,
it.
you know.
And yeah, I think I did settle on a heliport in that early layout. Yeah. Because it was just too much. Yeah.
What are those planes that just take off straight? A Harrier,
Oh,
right? That
yeah, the
Yeah,
Harrier.
yeah.
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
commercial
Right?
Harriers for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess along that lines, then with making, a Lego city ultimately comes down to decisions, right? And you don't have an antiquated law of like, for every building you have to have an adjacent parking lot. You
Right.
get to create some of those things,
Hmm.
right? That's where some of
Hmm.
this creativity comes
Yep.
from. So
Yeah.
how do you decide what details to include into your city versus, like where do you make
Yeah.
that compromise? Where does that come from?
That's a good question. So it starts for me, it starts with an idea or like a thought of how, what's the space I have. And then what I tend to do is I'll actually draw it out on graph paper. Usually
Mhm.
I'll sit there and kind of sketch it out and figure out, okay, this is roughly what I have. Or actually some of the track planning software that they have for like
Blue
I use
bricks.
like yeah, Bluebricks is great for that early planning stages because you can get base plates and just drop them down and you can see here's my dimensions, here's what I have. And it gives you a rough idea of like, okay, I can fit, 10 modulars across by, whatever. So I'll start doing that early on. And also thinking of accessibility is huge when you're planning a city.
Mhm.
Because you got to be able to reach. And so like for a long time, very, very long time, I was limited on the depths of my tables because I only went 3 base plates deep because that's as far as I could reach. I couldn't go any further. And it was always against the wall. My
Right.
layouts were always again around the walls because I felt like I kind of stole that from model railroading. I know I used to dabble with that, that's another huge amount of real estate to do anything with trains like that, electric trains. But it's the same idea. Like you kind of go along the wall because you can do different things better that way. You can
Mhm.
maximize the real estate. You can do things, and also because I love Lego trains, so I wanted to include trains in my layout. Like that was an absolute must for me was modulars and trains. So those were the two big things that were like my must-haves. Everything else was negotiable. The airport, that'd be nice, but maybe not. I dabbled like amusement park, different things like that you could do, but the trains and the modulars have always been my essentials. Like, gotta have those somewhere in the layout. And so that's where I'd start with that. And then yeah, so that's basically that. And then I start kind of mapping it out, figuring out, well, how many tables can I cram in the room, with still being able to walk around or access everything. And then that's how things slowly start to take shape. The layout will slowly start to kind of take shape with that. And then from there, it's just a matter of starting to figure out those details, like the track. Early on, I realized Lego track takes up a huge amount of space. And it's
Mhm.
basically like O gauge trains. They're massive. And, a return loop for standard Lego track is 3 base plates deep. So
Hmm.
if you want to have the trains going around in a continuous circle, you're 3 base plates deep minimum, right? And then you're also, because of those loops, the loops are like 3 base plates wide, the loop part of it. So you're losing real estate for modulars, right?
Yep.
So it's like this whole trade-off. And so then I realized, I'm like, well, wait a minute. What if I elevate the layout? What if I raise up the city and have the trains underneath it, kind of like a subway, like New York or something like that, right? And but I didn't really want a subway, but I was like, you know what? I think I can pull that off. And so that's where my idea to like elevate the layout came from, very, very early on. I was like, you know what? We're going to raise the city because then I can hide the return loops and I can get 3 more modular slots on the end of each end of the layout, right? And so that really was a huge like epiphany for me, where I was like, oh, like the the lights from above shine down. I'm like, oh, this is it. And I was so stoked about that. And then that's where my like signature retaining walls came from. That was one
Hmm.
of those things that like everybody knows me for my walls, and it was just out of necessity because I was like, I wanted to hide the wood platforms underneath because it was ugly. And so I'm like, I got to do something. So I'm just going to do these retaining walls, and that it all kind of spiraled from there. So that's like a 1,000 foot perspective of how I kind of plan. And then, I can go into the nitty gritty of like the individual stuff, placing modulars. That's a whole art form in itself, for example.
When you place the modulars, do you ever like think about, it sort of sounds like a little trivial and silly maybe, but like you're like, man, I don't want to put my house next to like the jazz club because like who wants to live next to that
I
and try to sleep while they're playing music at night, right? Like,
So yes, that does come into play. Not as much as more color. Like I won't put 2 modulars that are close in color right next to each other because to me they get washed out. So you
yeah.
won't have, like town hall next to the garage, because the garage, they're both that orange, dark orange, and they would just get washed out with each other. But then also the flip side of that is I won't put like an obnoxious color next to some where it doesn't go and it looks like really weird. And so there's for me, there's a huge like art to like figuring out which modulars look good together, or like the Parisian has the stairs on the side.
Hmm.
And so to me, I want to kind of emphasize that. And so I have the hotel next to it, the new hotel.
Yeah.
And because then it just really works really well. I feel like those two together versus having or like the police station is a great example too, because it has those tiny little side buildings, and they're
Hmm.
tiny and they're set back so far. And so if you put them right next to another like town hall, for example, you can't, there's those little side buildings are completely lost. You can't see them.
Yeah.
And so I
It is
ended up
interesting.
putting, yeah,
Well, I was
yeah,
gonna say it is interesting how much you have to pay attention to that, and there's a few people, obviously yourself included, who are very cognizant of how not only like you said color, but then also just how far like depth of where the building is placed. Like it does start to limit you on how you can put them side by side, and ultimately sort of achieve the effect that you want. So
absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of that that goes on in my city. And well, and then there's so many corners, which is a problem, right? Like every third modular is a corner, which I get it, but then I'm also like, guys, like, can you ease up on the corners a little bit? And I found I'm doing a lot more intersections that I would prefer, but I mean it's fine, but it's like, geez, guys, like ease up on the corners. Give me a break. Like I got enough corners to last me forever at this point. Yeah.
I've found if you put the two corners together, you can almost create like a little bit of an alleyway, which is like a nice sort of mix, so you're not having to lose more real estate to like road in between them and stuff. But
That's a neat idea. Yeah, yeah.
it's not always as natural as you got to kind of pick, right, like, or you could
Mhm.
do corner ones like butting up to like some parks. That always works pretty well.
That's a good, yeah. Or Greenway. Yeah, I've done that before in previous layouts where I've had like just a narrower like pedestrian walkway so that it's just like a little like a sidewalk or something. It's just
Mhm.
a larger sidewalk between, so that I can kind of squeeze in another modular on the end somewhere. Yeah, that's good too. And then the other problem with the corners is they also, a lot of them have those really neat little, like the brick bank, for example, has the laundromat. So I
Hmm.
love the laundromat more than honestly the brick bank. And so for me, I want that visible. So if I turn it the wrong way and it's on a side street, like you'll
Mhm.
never see the laundromat. So to me, so that again, it's limiting my placement. Whereas I have to have the bank has to be on a right corner versus a left corner so I can see that laundromat. you know. The new tavern's like that too, because it has the hat shop on the side. And so it's
Mhm.
the same idea. It's like I really love those little builds. Lego does such a good idea with those, but they can get lost really easily if you're not careful with that.
Definitely.
One thing, I mean, people make modular Lego cities, right? That's nothing necessarily new, but you found this way to really elevate it and make it different and unique. And by elevate, I mean literally and figurative, right?
Yeah.
By hiding your track. And as I've been watching your videos, one thing I really, really appreciate about how you do it is you've got these really nice sight lines, right? You can see, there's different layers, and each layer adds depth and tells different stories. And you strategically put some mountains around the layout, right? So, and then you talked about your retaining walls. I mean, it just adds so much to your city in a very unique and interesting way.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something that I really enjoy that aspect of it because a lot of cities out there, a lot of Lego cities are just it's rural modulars, and
Right.
I started that. We all start, I think everybody starts
It's a
that
good
way.
starting point,
And it
right?
makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. It's logical, right? You were thinking in Lego, we're thinking in terms of blocks, right? It's square. It makes sense. But for me, yeah, I thought early on after I elevated the layout, I was looking at it and I was like, oh, this is great. I have a row of modulars, I have a road, and then I have train track down low in front of it. And I was like, that's cool. But I'm like, it needs something's missing. And so then I remember my days of going to Universal Studios Hollywood, and I used to love going there as a kid. And I remember them talking about facades and like the movie magic and stuff. And I was like, I wonder if I could do that with my city. And I was like, and save money because like I'm like, oh, facades like it's half the building. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm already half as expensive as a full massive skyscraper or something. And so so I started doing that. I started doing these facades behind the modulars, which it framed out the modulars neatly, so it made it
Mhm.
like a natural. Because otherwise it was just the ugly wall. And I tried painting the wall and stuff, which again it works, but to me, I was like, yeah, it's kind of missing something. And so then I started doing the facades, which I really loved because they were fun to do, but also, it was fairly economical, and it just worked. It was really neat to do that. And so I started adding those, and it really made things pop. It really started to add that depth and stuff. And then later on, when I moved to my prior house, I was looking at it and I was saying, what if I started like stacking the modulars, so doing
Mhm.
rows of just not having them just in a single row, but doing a row and then a higher row and then another. And so then I really started to play with the elevation and stuff. And I really, really liked the result of that. Was fantastic because you'd have, yeah, these everywhere you look and you would just draw your eye in as you stood in the doorway, you were just completely drawn into this world, which was like that. And that's exactly what I was going for with that. It was really, really fun.
So we talked a little bit about how you plan just some of the basic, just like, well, this is going to go here, this is going to go there. But when you're building in that fashion, the last thing you want to be doing is stretching over and putting a modular up here and then moving this row of 6 modulars down one and then being like, actually, let's move that up. Let's take this mountain, this
Yeah.
literal Lego mountain, and move that over here. Like you're moving mountains.
Yeah.
So is there what goes into that sort of planning for you?
Lots of life lessons that I'm happy to share with y'all because you can learn from my mistakes. So, um, basically these days when I build, everything that I build is modular. So everything is either on a 32 by 32 base plate or a 16 by 32. And that includes my mountains. So
Okay.
all of my mountains are modular, especially, and the latest ones that I'm doing, some of the early ones I still have up in the room. Those are most of the mountains right here are slated to be rebuilt because I'm in the new room. So I have to kind of, rearrange them so they fit better. But my latest mountain designs are all again based on those base plates. So they'll be the mountain will be like 3 or 4 base plates wide, but each one is in a section. So I can easily take that 32 by
Mhm.
32 piece of mountain and move it. And I'm even trying to get to the point where I can make them almost interchangeable, so you can kind of mix and match as
Oh.
you need it, right? And that there's a lot of planning that goes into that. But yeah, so I've been really so that was a lesson that I learned because I used to build, and I think most of us do that. You just start building, right? And next thing you
Right.
know, you're overlapping base plates with plates and things. And next thing you know, you have this massive, city or whatever, and it's one solid mass of brick. And then you're like, oh shoot, like I want to rearrange this, or I want to move that, or I have to move houses or something. And you're like, what am I going to do? I take it all apart. because there's no other way to do it. So by building modularly and thinking in those, 32 wide terms, it really makes it easy to move. It's easy to move. You can just pick it up because the modulars are 32 by 32. So if everything else is that size, it's easy. You're just working in a grid and you can move things around, do what you need to, and keep it accessible and do that. The accessibility is huge though. And if you want to go deeper, so what I was able to do, I was fortunate in getting a bigger space on my new room. And for the first time, I actually have access behind the city, which is really cool.
Mm.
Mm.
And that was something that I was kind of hesitant at first because you lose, I had to give up,
Mhm.
3 feet on each of my peninsulas on my layout. But having that is, oh, it's so nice because now trains derail underneath the city. I just go around the back and get it. It's no big deal. I have to work on the wiring for my lighting. I just walk around the back and it can futz with the lighting all day. It's super easy instead of reaching over and precariously trying to, I got that, maybe I'll get that plug. All that has been alleviated. So if you have the ability to do something like that, highly recommend that. Yeah, and always just be thinking about that though, even as you're
Mhm.
building, even if you don't have space, accessibility is like key to city maintenance.
So I kind of teed this next part up, I feel like, in the beginning, but do you have any themes to your city? I know that your most recent video was the Ninjago one.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That's a so no. I mean, it's just a Lego city with mountains. I mean, that's kind of my. I don't have an overarching theme, and part of that is because Lego's been very inconsistent with their modulars. And so
Right.
like half of them I feel are like European inspired and half are like American inspired, which again I get it, variety and all that is good. It can also be challenging again trying to place, certain modulars with each other because I feel certain ones go better than others. But no, I don't really have any overarching theme on it. I have a few ideas. And then actually the Ninjago land was a huge I love those sets, especially I call them modulars. I know they're not official modulars, but the Ninjago, buildings are so detailed and they're so beautiful to look at. And so I just knew I wanted them, not on a shelf. I wanted them in the city somehow. But again, it's a totally different theme and it's so weird. And how do you incorporate it? And so for me, I figured again, I was thinking, and I'm like, oh, they need to be on their own like area. So I made this peninsula, and I'm like, it's the Ninjago Peninsula. And so it's part of the city, but separate, and almost like you can
Mhm.
travel to it, but it's just really, yeah, it's worked really well, and I've gotten really good feedback from people on that. They all say that they feel that it works really well versus sometimes just including it as a part of the city is a little
Mhm.
it's like kind of it's kind of weird, right? It doesn't quite fit. So there's things like that that you can do. Yeah.
It's funny how, again, right, like life echoes, life in your Lego city almost echoes life in real life. And
Mhm.
you're, looking at this and you're saying, like, well, the Ninjago theme is very cyberpunk. And so if
Mhm.
it's going to be something, it doesn't make sense that it's integrated into the kind of the standard city. So we have to sort of separate it. As you were explaining that, I was like, man, the politics in the city must be wild. Like, and what was the cause of the rift between the
The
regular Lego
split.
city and the did something
Right.
happen? Like, I want to know the backstory here. So
Well, in this part of the city is finished sooner, so what are you trying to say about that
yeah.
part of the city?
Right? Yeah, it's actually fun. I might actually have to start doing that. Some more like storytelling. That's a great idea because it is like, I never really thought about it. Like, yeah, what like why is it there, like the why of it, some of the things I could say, well, that's there because of X, Y, and Z, like the downtown area of my city where I have the Bugle and the Avengers Tower and Ghostbusters. To me it's like New York, so it's like that's
Mhm.
like the downtown, so all those big buildings are going to go there, my larger facades are all there, and that's the troublesome part of town where the bad stuff's happening. That's why you have all the superheroes are all camped out there to save the day.
Do you find when you travel that you get inspired by just seeing buildings like all over the
Oh,
place?
absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Not as much as I would like, but absolutely, especially in Europe. I've been I've been fortunate to go to England and France a couple times, and just the architecture there is amazing. London's actually fascinating because you'll have this, like 500-year-old building right next to this ultra modern all glass skyscraper that was literally just like built yesterday. And it's this weird dichotomy of buildings that you see, and it's really interesting. And Paris is like just the architecture. Oh, it's beautiful. Paris has been my inspiration for my I call them like half modulars or facades that I've been bringing to shows. So I've been trying to,
Hmm.
because again, it's it's sharing the hobby and stuff, and it's like, well, people always ask me, people ask me for years, like they're like, Mark, how, are you ever gonna bring your city to a show? And I'm like, dude, like, do you understand what that entails? Like not even a local show. I'm like, dude, like, there's no way I could move. It would take me like a month to set it up, And
Yeah.
so I started thinking like, there's got to be a way for me to do that, right? And I thought, oh, like my facades are pretty small, like they're flat, right? And if I build them right, I can make them modular so that I can take them apart. And so that's what I started to do. So I've actually this actually past June
Hmm.
in Brick World, I brought my first facade and I exhibited it there, and it was very well received, and it was fantastic because I finally got to show like my work. And then that inspired me to actually I'm working on I actually have a mock that I'm working on now. I've been teasing it out on YouTube and Instagram, that I'm going to display next year, which actually incorporates more elements of the things I'm known for. So it actually has my retaining wall in it. It
Mm.
actually has, more of the facades with the Parisian architecture, which I really love. And because to me it's super detailed and it really shows well, And so, but that's kind of where I've been going with that is this evolution of design and also transportability, which is huge. So
So I might trigger some city builders here, so apologize in advance. But how do we talked? There's not an overarching theme, right? But there's a couple
Mhm.
sub themes. I'm definitely
Mhm.
going to trigger West. How do you kind of manage? A lot of people get stuck or they get to an impasse when it's like, well, Lego came out with a new modular and it's at a whole new style. God
Mhm.
forbid the day that they change the white lamppost to gunmetal gray or something like that, right? Because then, Wes is
All
gonna
the
have to go into
lampposts have to
Bricklink
change.
and
Yeah.
buy 10 of, they're gonna be $10 a pop, and you're gonna need 20, right? So, how do you kind of allow yourself maybe some grace in the creative
Mhm.
process to
Mhm.
kind of keep building and kind of just not getting held up on some of the tiny details, while also
Yeah.
clearly focusing so much on all the different
Right.
tiny details of your city?
You have to be flexible, and you have to be adaptable, and you have to realize that, yeah, sometimes Lego goes in a direction that you didn't think they were going to go in. And like, for example, the diner, okay, the diner modular, that
Mm-hmm.
one was very polarizing, okay, because that was the first one that
What?
didn't yeah, right, that was like the first one that didn't fit that like kind of European or even a old American style. It was this modern like throwback, and you're just like, what is this thing? And I honestly, when it first came out, I was like, first you're like, oh, that's cool, it's shiny, and then I thought about it, I'm like, what the heck am I gonna do with this thing? Where am I gonna put it? In this, I'm
Yeah.
like, what am I gonna do? And so I floundered with it for the longest time. I was like, well, tried it, I tried every possible combination. Nothing was made me happy with it. And so I think I just ended up like putting it off in a corner somewhere. I started like, this is going to be a new street because this is Lego's going in this weird direction now with Art Deco stuff. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to start an Art Deco street. And then they never did. So I was like, oh, you guys are killing me. Like, but I literally like kind of I started a new street for it, because it's kind of a corner, kind of, sort of. And so I just was like, hey, you're over there in that part of the city and we'll see what happens, kind of thing. So you have to be flexible. But yeah, sometimes it is infuriating, there are decisions that they make, or you're like, why did you make that? Like, make more housing for my
Yep.
minifigures have no place to live in the city. We have all this awesome stuff. Like, make more housing.
What
Yeah.
what cracks me up, and Grinch's point is one we've debated at length on the podcast before. And so to kind of recap, I find that there's two major issues with like not only the Lego modular series, but just Legos in general, right? And the first is scale. The
Yeah.
scale is so
Yes.
challenging sometimes because
Yeah.
it even within what they call the system, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
scale for a human to minifigure scale varies widely, right? Sometimes
Yes.
things are way overscale, sometimes things are
Hmm.
underscale. So when you're building and trying to add details to things, like remember they had that faucet piece. It's not really in wide
Hmm.
circulation these days, but
Yes.
it's huge.
Hmm.
It's
Friends. I think it came
gigantic.
from Friends, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's almost like the size, like half the size of a minifigure, right? Could you
yeah,
imagine
it's
walking
gigantic.
into a bathroom and like the faucet is like 2 feet
It's like a
tall?
shower.
Right. So it just those things
Yeah,
are always
yeah,
so funny, right? And yet, like, that's the one of the things that I struggle with is like when I'm thinking through scale, I'm like, does a minifigure have to be able to fit in this or not? And I
right.
think Lego has started to sort of walk a fine line. Something like the Orient Express train coaches sort of, you know, they sort of forgave themselves a little bit as they were building it. You know, you can't fit minifigures through some of the passageways and stuff, but the detail still is really great. And so I just curious kind of to take your thought on that, because like you said, the lack of housing in the
Hmm.
modular line is really you know, you're like,
Yeah,
wow, where do these guys
It's
sleep? I also
synonymous with life.
yeah.
well,
Well,
that's fair.
and I get it with that. It's not like housing isn't like exciting. It's more exciting
Yeah.
to have this flashy museum or whatever it is. I totally understand that. They got to sell sets, and not everybody thinks like we do. We're like, no, I'd be really happy with like more brownstones. Give me like different,
Hmm.
or whatever. Give me housing. I'll buy tons of those. But no, yeah, I agree with that. It's challenging, and the scale can be frustrating. Luckily, the modulars, but even the modulars, like the museum, needs to be 3 stories. It's too short. I'm looking at it right now, and it's driving me crazy because next to the pet shop, it's like, I'm like, this thing needs to, it's a massive museum. It
Hmm.
needs to be more impressive than it is. And I know I can add a third floor to it, at a cost, but it is challenge. And like Town Hall, for example, is massive. That's like, I think it's like the biggest modular. It just dominates. And so for me, I have to put Green Grocer has to go next to that because anything else looks ridiculous next to it because the scale is so different, the
Hmm.
height, they look silly to me. So I've really you have to give yourself, again, it's giving yourself grace to understand that it's not perfect and that the minifigures, I have maybe 4 houses in the whole city for minifigures and that's it for but
They're a
so
very
you kind
close
of have to
community.
think, yeah, and then but then also for example, do you guys remember the Lego Ideas, the fishing
Yeah.
store?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great set. That set is, I love that set, but it's way
Yeah. Hmm.
bigger than the modular, so it's way out of scale. Like it's like way out. It should be like half the size, for a fishing jack. It's like, come on. And so I was for the longest time, I tried to incorporate that in my city. I tried, and everything I did, I'm like, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. It's too big. And so I just said, you know what? It's going to go on the shelf because I don't until I get, a massive basement that I can build in and have like a giant beach where I can have it off on its own. It
Hmm.
just doesn't
Hmm.
look right to me. And so ultimately I said, you know what? It's okay. It's a beautiful piece. It's on display in my shelves, but it's just not a part of the city right now. And so you have to be okay with that as well,
Yeah.
being like, yeah.
You've sort of indirectly commented on this a little bit, but do you rely on forced perspective at all? So like the things that are closer to where the viewer might be looking at it are
Mhm.
either inherently larger and then they get smaller the further back you go to sort of artificially create a sense of depth, or kind of vice versa? Do you use larger things in like the back, second and
Mhm.
third row of your build to sort of make it look more cohesive?
I do that, but not to the extent of like I do, especially more with like trees and things. I'll do that where I'll have, bigger trees and then smaller if I want to really force the perspective. I do that more on the mountains. Because the mountains I really want people to feel like they're, like massive and they are massive and
Hmm.
huge, but I really want to force it. So I'll do the smaller trees like higher up and then
Hmm.
kind of force it that way. In the layout, I don't have as much room for that. So pretty much I guess you could say the facades, because the facades, most of them don't have interiors. Like some of the closer ones do, but some of the ones that are just like against the wall and just sitting there, those are at a different scale than the modulars would be, because I'm saving parts, but also because there's no detail in them. And so, yeah, so I do a little bit of that trickery to do it, which is,
Hmm.
it's great to do. I've seen some fantastic things that people have done with the forced perspective that really gives you that illusion of depth and things. There's a lot that you can do. So I do a little bit, but not as much as you would think, I guess, than other than like messing with trees and things like that.
But I do want to give you some credit because you were mentioning the fishing store, and I was like, wow, you're really like paying attention to scale in the city that I
Mhm.
don't know if everyone always does, right? And I don't want to like maybe a very soft critique, right? Sometimes I think when people build Lego cities, they just kind of take everything they have and throw it out on a table. But it seems like you are really purposefully trying to match things up, and you're cognizant of that, of like these buildings,
Definitely.
when I was thinking of utility of like, I don't want to put my police station next to like my residential area necessarily. You're thinking like, no, that's a larger building. And it's just sort of interesting how you're approaching the problem. And I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
And that's an interesting thing to mention because because we all think differently. Like even
Mhm.
even sorting Lego is something that's that's a hot button, and I'm the oddball. Like I sort by color. It's rare. I know a lot of people like to do it by type. I sort by color first, and for me, it's just that's how my brain works, and that's how I can find pieces very quickly that way. Versus by type, I'm like by type. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what? No, that doesn't work for me. And it's the same thing with the city building. It's like one thing, things that are important to me are not as important to others, or they don't think about that way, or they look at things in different ways. And it's interesting because you get a lot of really neat perspectives and ideas. And that's the thing that I love engaging with the community because I get so many ideas from from all of you that are building and posting and sharing ideas with because
Mhm.
it's like I hadn't thought about that, or yeah, that's a great idea, or whatever. It's just all this, it's this constant inspiration wheel, which is fantastic.
For example, Baradur is right behind you and ripe to be placed in the city. No, I'm just,
Yeah, right.
Sauron, the
I
cloud of
thought,
Sauron will be.
you see, you could put it in the city, right? Yeah, I was actually talking with a friend of mine the other night and saying I would love to put the Lion Knight's castle in my city, right? Because it's like you could do that. Like in England, there's old
Yeah.
castles right in downtown, right? And
Mhm.
I'm like, wouldn't that be cool? But then I'm like, and then it's the real estate issue because Lion Knight
Mhm.
Castle's huge, and I'm like, I could put it in the city, but I would give up, 4 modulars to do it. So
Right.
like I'm like, is it worth it? And I don't know. And so so yeah, there's it's always a trade-off. But I always get those crazy ideas like, oh, or wouldn't it be neat to have the Simpsons sets in the city, right? I have
Mhm.
those. And I'm like, that'd be really cool. But those eat up a huge amount of space because they're not even modular scale.
That would be like a very interesting way of sort of mimicking like Edinburgh or something like that, right? With like
Yeah,
a very
yeah,
historic downtown with the
yeah,
city around it. If you did
yeah.
that, would you make it so like the castle is a tourist destination and there's like modern Lego minifigures like walking around, or would you sort of magically have like a time warping section so that it's
Yeah.
like no kidding back in time?
I think I would do it as a museum, but because you could still use all the old minifigures. They're just, actors dressed up in
Hmm.
costume, right? To reenacting. And then, so I would, my brain would probably be, it's modern times. Like I don't have much time travel in my, except for Star Wars. That's the only one where they get a pass. They can time travel.
So, do you do anything seasonally then? Like, is there ever any, the Winter Village, for example, right? Do you ever like
Yeah.
incorporate that in there for the year and
So
then exchange
yeah,
or anything?
I would love to, but it's a time issue for me. So
Yeah.
I've bought the parts to do like I would just want to just like string lights from the building, from the modulars, right? And just do like wreaths on the doors and stuff, like even simple things like that. And I always intend to, but I always just don't have the time to do it. And it's a lot of work. I mean, I decorate my real house. I go all out for like Christmas and Halloween and stuff. And so that takes up most of my decorating time, I guess. So it's just, I would love to, but it's just something I don't have time to do. Yeah,
Yeah, no, there's time is definitely the limiting resource in most of this, right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a specific area of the city that like you are very proud? I mean, is what's if we were to be there, what would be the first thing that you would show us?
Um, oh, that's a good question. So because this layout is still very much like being built, and I've been trying to probably the far wall where like the downtown is.
Hmm.
I've been really trying. I've been making an effort because I kind of when I build, and I think a lot of us are like when we build, it's like, oh, I'm gonna work on this, then I'm gonna work on that, then I'm gonna do this, then I'm gonna do that, and I'm kind of all over the place, as inspiration hits or time or
Yeah.
whatever. But I've been really trying to make a concerted effort to finish my like back wall of the city where the downtown is, and it's almost there, not quite, but it's almost done. And so that's kind of the area I'm probably the most proud of, because that's where the depth really shows with the different modulars and facades and the different layers and things. And so that's probably the most thing I'm most proud of for now, but that'll change as it evolves, you know.
Yeah, in a video that you put out a couple months ago, you mentioned you had just moved to your new room. Is this your second or third iteration of the city, or if you've been through the cycle before?
So yeah, so actually it's more so I'm the type that I'll wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm not happy with my city layout, whether it's done or not, and I'll just tear the whole thing out and rebuild it. So this is probably my seventh or eighth version of the city, honestly, because I had
Since
three
you've
versions.
moved, or in general?
No, just in general. No,
Oh,
I'm
okay,
not that
okay. I
crazy.
was like,
Yeah, no,
whoa.
But I did
Pretty sure
move, but I
that video
can't.
was
No,
3 months ago.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Like I've moved. Like so, I moved to my prior place. We were there just about 4 years. So, and I redid the city 3 times in those 4 years.
Okay.
And so yeah, so it's about, like once a year maybe, if that. Yeah. But that's an important thing I would say to people listening is, again, it's Lego and it's designed to be played with. So don't be afraid to take it apart. Even if it's a modular, like don't be afraid. Like if you think, oh, you know what, I don't like that modular, well, change it, like make it different, or it doesn't fit. Well, change it. You can build and change things. And that's why I like this hobby so much than a lot of other hobbies that I've dabbled in, because a lot of things, like once you build a model kit, or you make a train layout or whatever it is, it's done. Like you can't change it easily. Like, it's glued
Mhm.
down. It's all, Lego, assuming you're not craggling anything, which I hope you're not, it's like you can change it. It's easy. Like change it around, move it, even if it's just moving modulars around. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just move them around. You're like, oh, how would this look here? I don't know. But if it doesn't look good, you can put it back. It's fine. It's easy to move it around and change it. And it's constantly evolving. Like my city's constantly evolving as I learn things, as I, you know, make mistakes and do stuff. It's always, changing, and I'm always learning from it. It's when it's static, I think it becomes boring. And then it's
Right.
like, it's just like your sets on the shelf. You're like, oh, that's cool. Like I look at it and I'm like, okay, I built that. That was great. Okay. Now what am I going to do with it? I can swoosh it around a little bit if it's a X-wing or something, but otherwise I'm like, like show it to people, but you gotta, enjoy it. That's the joy. And that's the joy for me, is the building and the rebuilding and, designing.
So speaking of the designing, has there ever been a build in your city that was what was the most challenging build? Was there ever anything that you had to put it down for a
Mm,
month and you came back to it,
mhm.
sort of thing?
The mountain building was pretty challenging to figure out.
Sure.
It was very fun, but it was also challenging. And the mountains have evolved over time a lot. I still have my original mountain. I don't have the heart to tear that one apart. I've torn apart all the other ones as I've gone, but I have that original mountain, and I learned so much from it. And I think it actually still looks good, even next to the new ones. I'm like, yeah, it still holds up. But yeah, I would say that was probably pretty challenging, especially working in the limited space. Because if you remember, I only have 3 base plates of depth in my city, right?
Uh-huh.
Now I have more because I have that back aisle. So now the world has opened up. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But with the 3 base plate limit, I had to build a mountain in like 1 base plate, because I had the mountain, a modular, and a road, and I was using the old road plates. So I was like, I got to get this to like fit in like 1 base plate. And so how am I going to get
Right.
height? And so I really struggled with that. But then I figured, oh, I'll take my retaining wall trick and put that to the mountain. So that gives me automatically, like 8 inches of height right there. Boom, easy. And then figuring out how to slope, make it look like a mountain, but not too blocky, but not too this, it was a lot of trial and error. And it was a lot of falling apart as I figured out how to make them structurally sound. Because as you get, higher than about like a foot and a half with Lego, it starts to topple. It's not
Right.
stable, and it is really tricky to work with. And so I had to figure out supports, but I didn't want to build, solid brick mountains, because I'm not a billionaire. So, I had to like figure out like, okay, so how am I gonna do supports and things like that. But it was a fun journey figuring it out, and I'm still figuring things out and adapting and changing and stuff. So that was probably the biggest, yeah, like most challenging project, I would say.
Internally, do you use things like Duplo to kind of fill the space, or do
So
you?
yeah. That's a great question. So I do not use Duplo because it turns out Duplo is actually more expensive than
It
regular brick.
is.
It is really
Yeah.
expensive. I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the store, and they don't sell bricks like Duplo brick is really hard. Like the bricks are really hard to. They don't sell like a brick pack. It's all like trains and weird like
A lot of
junior stuff.
slopes.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's not gonna work. So no, I use a lot of brick, like 2x4s. So it actually in just like it was like a year ago or 2 years ago, Lego came out with a set, and it was called like just bricks or lots of bricks or something. And it was
Uh-huh.
literally just 2x4s and 2x2s, and I bought so many of those and then they were like at Costco,
Oh
and I was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, load up the cart because this is all brick, and I'm like, this is gold because those, and I'll build columns. But what I do is I don't just stack them, 2x4s just stacked. I'll do columns of 4x4, so there'll be 2x4, two 2x4s, and then two 2x4s crossed over, stacked up, so it's a big 4x4 column, and that's really stable. It works really well, and you can go really high with that, and it
Uh-huh.
doesn't bend or flex much. And so yeah, that was kind of the trick I used. So it's mostly like, yeah, it's mostly brick built in there. I'll use some of those panels, those they came with the Bat Cave, the old Bat Cave. They were those tan, what are they? They're like 2 wide, and they're like 8 tall, like support columns kind of thing. I
Mm-hmm.
picked up some of those because people were buying the Bat Cave and then parting it out and selling the minifigures, because those were worth a lot. But the actual those columns, like
Yeah.
I picked those, they were so cheap because people they're like, what are you gonna do with these? That's that. So I would just clear out Bricklink stores that people, parting out the Bat Cave, and I picked up quite a few of those. But yeah, it's a lot of that, and then it's a lot of, again, you also have to do kind of layering with that. So I'll go up a certain height and then do like 16 by 16 plates to fill
Uh-huh.
in, and then build on, and then so then I have a new foundation to build on, and then I can go higher and higher, and that's been really structurally stable. I haven't had a mountain collapse yet, so I've been pretty lucky so far.
No mountain slides.
No avalanches. Yeah, no
Yeah.
avalanches.
Well, I hope your city has FEMA or something, because you might
Right?
you might need it one of
I might
these
need it.
days. I did really like your answer to the challenge part, though, because you brought it up a couple times, and we've had this kind of unintentional sub message come up on this podcast multiple times, especially with guests, and that is that constraints and challenges are really the catalyst of creativity in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, right?
Absolutely.
There's no reason for a creative solution if you can do anything. So I just wanted to really echo that, you embrace that challenge, and were able to build something really cool and really unique and really just different because of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, there's other cities out there with modulars, but yours is just so unique, beautiful, right? And in some regards, of just, you got these layers and then these nice mountains in the background. You got a little train that runs by. I mean, it's a really cool scene that you were able to capture, all because the table was that wide and you had a smaller room.
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. If you work within your limitations, and embrace embrace them as challenges, and find creative solutions to what you're trying to do. And there's always a solution. You can always figure out something. Even
Right.
if I get that a lot from people, like, oh, I wish I had I've been very fortunate to increase my space over the years,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of people always tell me, like, oh, Mark, I have a tiny room, what can I do? I'm like, well, you can actually do a lot with that.
Yeah.
There's a lot you
Mm-hmm.
can do. You just have to think outside the box with it, and to be a little creative with what you have. But you can have a city in a very small space, and a very nice city that looks fantastic. It's just, working within those limitations, and embracing the challenge, and, going that extra mile. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you, Mark, and I
Mhm.
thought we'd end here with a fun one.
Okay.
If you could live in any one of your city buildings, now it doesn't have to be one of your 4 residential houses, don't worry. Which one would it be and why?
Oh gosh. That's a good question. I like the Actually, I like the brownstones from the pet shop. So I was
Yeah.
lucky I have two of those. I would probably be boring and live in one of those because I think they have a lot of charm. They're really cute. I probably would pick that to live in. Yeah,
It's
one
in
of
a
the
good area of the
brownstones.
city, you
It's in a
know.
good part of the city. It's
Yeah,
walkable. There's,
yeah.
everything's kind of close. You don't
Good
have to
school
drive in the
district.
car.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Far away
You
from
know
that
the mayor
Ninjago land.
personally. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Not
you
too
know
close
it.
to downtown with all the trouble. Yeah, with all the problems there. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week and walking through your city, the details, the process. And I would encourage, I mean, we just talked about it, but if a picture's worth 1,000 words, you've got thousands of videos about it. So go and please encourage all the listeners to check out Mark or Mr. Bookieboo City on YouTube or Instagram.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Brick mail. All right, so that was today's topic. Big shout out to Mark, or Mr. Bookieboo, as he is also known as, for joining us on the podcast this week. We had a really good time talking with you and really appreciate you hopping on the show and taking time out of your busy day. As West and I know, it takes a lot to move. And so the fact that you were able to get on the podcast shortly after you had moved and getting your city set up, we know what that commitment means. So thank you so much for joining us. But in this section of the show is called Brick Mail. So Wes, why don't you crack open the first piece?
All right. So our first letter, email comment comes from Calvin2104, who writes, West, good to see you back. Do you guys really think that the Italian Riviera set will be that popular? I think it looks nice for sure, but honestly, I see it getting forgotten about in a month or two. Lego's coming out with so much fun stuff, and this doesn't scream classic to me at all. Also, the price point is going to hurt the demand, in my opinion. Remember, Pirates of Barracuda Bay was $200 when it was on shelves, which is an incredible value. This set is at $300. Doesn't make me feel that way at all. And Calvin, I think you brought up some great points here. I think when Grinch and I were commenting on this, and certainly commenting on feeling like it's a classic set, we're thinking the colors, and we're just thinking sort of the vibrancy and just, sort of the elements of the set itself. But what you're bringing up, I think you've convinced me that there could be some trouble on the horizon for the Italian Riviera. There are a lot of really great sets to come out, including some interesting rumored sets this year that are going to break some records if they come true. Those rumors, that is. And the price point you brought up is a really great price point too. Ideas used to be such a great value, right? And now, due to its popularity, due to the increasing size of these idea sets, they're just getting more and more expensive. The Botanical Gardens is, I think, a wonderful, kind of complement to this idea. And you're totally right. I mean, the Pirates of the Barracuda Bay, you got a pirate ship, you got this really cool, pirate fortress. If you could take it apart, you could do a lot with it. And for only $200, yeah, that's a great Lego value. $300 for this does feel like a lot. So, Grinch, what do you think?
I have to politely disagree with my boy Calvin. We talked in Chicago, and I gave him a little anecdote about the it was the Book Nook, the Lord of the Rings Book Nook, and he's like, dude, it's so overpriced. And I'm like, I don't think the price is that bad. And the example I gave him, I said, the Burrow. In 2020, we got a new Burrow, and then just last year we got the new, quote unquote UCS Burrow. And I said the price difference between those was $120. Would you rather go from that Burrow to the UCS Burrow, or would you rather have the Book Nook and the one Burrow? And he's like, well, damn, I hate that you use that as an example. So I think values is hard.
It's certainly in the eye of the beholder too. Right. I mean,
and there's a couple things I really like about this is we've never gotten this type of set from Lego. This an Italian themed set like this, right? B, there's a lot of the brand new dark or reddish orange color in it. There's a lot of the more recent brick color of light nougat. Typically that was only reserved for minifigures. Even this yellow, the bright light yellow is newish, or is that the original yellow? I don't recall, but the color scheme, it's colorful and people are going to like that. There's other small pieces in here like the aqua colored boat that I think people will like. I don't think the price is terrible on it. I mean, it's still 3,250 pieces for $300, and then you get what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minifigures with it. So I do think from a parts perspective, it's got what it needs. But I do agree with ideas. There's been this kind of more recent phenomenon of where like things sell really well at first and then they kind of die down. I mean, I haven't heard anybody talk about the botanical gardens for a hot minute. I haven't heard anybody talk about the tree house. I think would be the last like big hit where it kind of had a little bit of a staying power. The lighthouse, for example, was in and it seemed like out. But I do think those are more niche idea sets, right? And ideas has become a little bit more niche with stuff like, the jazz quartet and the piano, right? Like you're probably not going to buy a $300 Lego piano unless you are a piano player. So I think with something like Italian Riviera, that's a little bit more just kind of culturally known, or just it's an area, it's a thing versus an object. And so I think that's why I used Old Fishing Store as an example of it will sell well to start, and I think it's going to have some staying power in terms of like people aren't necessarily going to forget about it.
Yeah. The one thing I will comment though is a lot of the pieces are going to be used in the base, right? That rocky base that looks really great on the front, but it continues all the way around. And I think that's a really great trick for Lego. But talk about a large chunk of those pieces is getting devoted into creating not only that, but then all of the actual like superstructure that goes underneath the buildings itself, right? So we're seeing so much go into the foundation, which on one hand, as a Lego fan, like just the level of detail on there is really great. But on the other hand, too, those 3,000 pieces, a significant chunk of that is devoted to just creating that build.
I would like to challenge that notion only because it didn't. Do you think that hurt Eldorado Fortress?
Well, as I was commenting on it, I kind of actually did a little bit. And I, on one hand, I really loved Eldorado Fortress. On the other hand, and still do,
more than half of that build is the rock work.
Yeah, and it's great, right? And maybe it's just the difference of like the 200 and what it was like 230 for Eldorado Fortress.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like this one's, once you get kind of above that like 250 range in my book, that's sort of when you're getting into like serious Lego money territory. And
if you don't have that rock work though, then you can't have that inset level.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
Which last week was very cool for you, right?
It is. It still is, right? I just
it's trade-offs, right? It's trade-offs.
Think both things can be true, right? I think we can say that's a lot of money. We can comment that there's a lot of money and pieces going into some stuff that like it's on the back and you're not always going to see. We can also still appreciate the detail that's there. So
one last thing on this. Thank you, Calvin, for the enticing question. Is let's say the entire Lego community gets wallet fatigue overnight and people don't buy this. That's why I use the word sleeper hit, because I think it will be one that does, after it retires, will be a good piece that does people will go back and buy.
Yeah.
We just don't have anything really like this, right? That's what part of the reason I was saying it would be more of a sleeper hit than just, a grand slam out of the gate and just always out of stock or something like that. I think it will have some staying power for years to come, just like people will still buy Barracuda Bay and for more money than they would at retail, right? So I think that's kind of where I was going with that too.
Yeah, that's a great point. But I do also like Calvin's point that we're getting a very crowded Lego release schedule for the end of the summer and really the end of the year. And there's going to be some really, we're going to have the holiday set's going to increase in price this year. We already know that. It's been reported. We have the fall UCS set for Lego that's coming out for Star Wars. We've got some big stuff coming out here. This is just another really big Lego set that it has to compete with. Doesn't mean that it's not good. Just means it's a crowded release window.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's go ahead and head over to our next brick mail piece of mail here. Michael writes in. He says, "I just listened to the American Bricker podcast. She's right. That's such a great name, and I really like the concept. And we'll have to check out the first episode when it drops. I've seen a lot of American pickers because my wife has way too much of a taste for reality TV." And if this leans into what fun things we have found without having all this horse trading and deal making, and not just be ideal because it's all about Lego, but it'd be cutting out the parts of the TV show that I don't care for. My basement is a bit too far from Idaho to be a likely visit, and I don't think I have anything that interesting. But as someone who definitely prefers used Lego to new Lego, this show sounds like likely to scratch an itch. And listening to the podcast, I think I realized a part of why I like used Lego better. Obviously, there's the money factor. Lego is expensive, but it's also the thrill of sifting through a lot and finding out what's in it. The best Lego experience I had in 2024 was getting a lot of good looking used Lego. We saw a monorail in it, only to find the Princess Leia minifig from the 10123 Cloud City and a good chunk of the set. Alas, Boba Fett remained elusive. If American Brickers can deliver on half of that kind of excitement, I am clearly the right audience. So thanks for making me aware of it. So thank you, Michael. Buying used Lego is a lot of fun. That's part of the thrill of buying it. So I like that. I think we commented on before, but like there's so many different ways to engage with the hobby that sometimes you forget about the other ways that you can engage with the hobby. And I think it's what makes the hobby so great and has so much staying power. But yes, look up. There was a couple questions on where to find her on YouTube. It's American Bricker, all one word. If I put a space in it, I had a hard time finding it myself. So make sure you just do the whole one word there for American Bricker in order to find it easier.
Yeah, and I think, to the point that Grinch you made, and then to the point that Mark made in our interview with him today, right? Like there's just so many different ways to approach this hobby. And it is really fun finding those niche ways that people go about that. And so I think the effort at American Bricker to kind of highlight both the collections and that effort itself are both really cool ways to sort of engage in the hobby. And it's just fun to see, more variation on Lego social media, right? And what everyone's putting out. So
yeah, absolutely. Why don't you take us through our next piece of brick mail?
Yeah, our next mail comes from Bob, and he writes, I want to thank you for the last couple of podcasts. Just an outstanding job. It was really great listening to hear about the older sets in detail. Both of you do a great job at educating us listeners about the smaller and retired series from the past. I thought it was really fun in the recent episode that you were talking about getting rid of sets for people in their 60s. Goodness, I hope not. I'll be retired in about 20 months, and I hope to get building on everything I have in my inventory. Maybe I'll start getting rid of sets in my late 70s. Keep up the good work. I don't think I'm alone in enjoying the history of Lego as you guys are presenting it, Bob. And Bob, I do want to clarify, I think we were not necessarily mentioning that, but we were mentioning buying Lego at estate sales. And so I think when you're retired is a wonderful time to continue to explore that hobby. And it's really fun to hear from people who are in your age range, because I think it's interesting to hear from AFOLs of all ages, right? And we have the newer, younger AFOLs who are all over Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. We have kind of that millennial generation of AFOLs that kind of lived through sort of Lego's, renaissance in the 90s and 2000s. And then we kind of have our like OG AFOLs who knew the monorail when it first came out, right? Who can appreciate just how much Lego has grown and evolved over the decades of its release. And so that's really fun to hear from fans of all ages and their own experiences.
And I did want to mention that our very own mother, who just retired, also went out and bought some Lego. She got some of the she was visiting
for herself.
She was visiting the my daughter, and I had her put together a little botanical set. And then the next time she was visiting, she's like, "Hey, by the way, I went out and bought a couple sets." And I was like, "Oh, which ones?" The botanicals. So she got a couple of the I think it was the plum tree or something like that, and then the orchid or something like that. So
You know,
Yeah.
Grinch, that actually reminds me. I got a botanical set in the mail from somebody, sent from 1-800-Flowers, where apparently
Ah.
now you can order Lego sets, specifically the botanical ones, and send them to people, much like you would maybe send them flowers or something else.
Mm-hmm.
So cool just to see. Highlighting that line specifically of Lego sets. I think they have done so much more for Lego in terms of outreach and bringing new people to the hobby than any other individual theme. Now, that's my hypothesis. I don't have anything to back that up. It's anecdotal, if you will. But I think
As a theme, it feels like the last theme to do something as impactful was Star Wars.
yeah, just the amount of people you talk to, adults especially, who you would not maybe assume are fans of Lego, and they go, yeah, the botanical ones. My spouse got me these flowers or whatever, and those were so much fun. And you're like, yeah, welcome to the show, guys. Like,
Yeah, we
welcome
did
to
a
the
white
party.
elephant party at my job a couple of years ago, and I was in it, of course. So like somebody purposely, we did like the Yankee swap or whatever it's called. So like you could pick a set, you could pick the gift and then swap.
Mm-hmm.
And so, somebody, and I know who, put in a Lego set for me, right? Because it's but they also were just like, I just thought it was a good idea, and so I didn't even end up going home with it because it ended up getting fought over because there was people who had never built a Lego set that ended up, it got stolen from me originally because you go and you're like you give the gift to somebody with the idea, right? Like you draw the
With them
person's
in mind.
name and you
Yeah.
get them to as long it was the bonsai tree, by the way, and then somebody grabbed it from me and then somebody grabbed it from them as like and there was only like 6 of us, so the fact like this thing was in 3 people's hands at one point, so it
That's
was
so
almost
funny.
like the scene in The Office when Michael got the iPod and they had like a $20 limit. So he was like, yeah, but an iPod was better. So he went and got an iPod. And then everybody, of course, was like, well, yeah, I'll take the iPod. That was the bonsai tree. Well, thank you for writing in, Bob. Definitely appreciate the thoughts and the feedback. So our last piece of brick mail is from Evan Telshow, who gave me a pronunciation guide. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Another banger of an episode. My sister is happy with the female inclusion to the podcast. I'll definitely be tuning into the American Bricker Show each month, and that Game Boy looks nice. Perfect timing. We talked about that on this episode. To me, the price is justified because they have those very custom screen pieces that add to the value. The DC modular series will be overpriced, but maybe the comeback to Lego DC. Thanks a lot for the pod. Well, we shared our thoughts on both those sets earlier. And yeah, I didn't realize it, but American Bricker was our first female guest. So definitely have plans to have another female guest on the show, at least one more, and we'll try to keep that sort of thing up. So definitely want to hear from all members of the Lego community here and people who engage with the hobby, because they bring a different perspective and a valuable perspective to the table as well. And that is a wrap of another episode of AFOLs Welcome. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to the show. If you would like to write the podcast, please email us at afolswelcome@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at afolswelcome. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
See ya.